to Organizing Tales, a TV program, based on Organizing Tales, the book, based on my experience as a security guard and a union organizer working at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts from 1991 to 2007. So in our first three programs, we have covered how there came to be radical change in the working conditions of the security guards at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, how we met in secret to figure out what to do about that, how we sought out a labor union and voted it in, and how we won a good contract without really knowing that we had done so. We now pick up at the central most important event in the history of the union, more important even than organizing the union itself at the beginning, more important than anything, and how and why we will examine in this and in the next episode. So after our first contract began operating, United Plant Guard Workers of America, which is a union which we had joined, began to seem worse and worse and worse. And it was a huge problem. And one of the main parts of that huge problem was a guy named Kerry Lacey. Kerry Lacey was what they call the group leader in this here union, UPGWA, United Plant Guard Workers of America, and he was supposed to come every so often and see how things were going and make sure they were going okay. And if we had problems, we were supposed to be able to call him up. And most of all, when we had grievances, there's a 4-step grievance system there, and in the second and third step, you need to have the man from the union there. And the problem was that he never showed up. And so we were months and months behind in the grievance process, in which timeliness is extremely important. So we were finding out, and I think the museum was finding out also, some for us, very distressing fact, and for them a very impressive fact, and that is that we were working with a group of union officials who were making $90,000 to $100,000 a year, and who were happy mostly doing nothing and living as fat cats. In fact, later, my friend Dave Hebden, who had worked with me on the contract along with Lisa Ray and Jill Badamarco, joked with me. He said, "Mike, we missed the boat. We were supposed to, become a union official. We were supposed to get $90,000 a year and go to those great conventions they have in Las Vegas. Instead, here we are." That being the case, as I say, the museum, I think, was licking their chops, and going around their head were some very interesting ideas. Not happy for us, but I think they were thinking, now is the time we can get rid of this union. So round about 1 year and a little over a year into the contract, a contract which, by the way, the museum had executed exactly as both sides had agreed at the end of the contract negotiations. And anyway, in the middle of the second year of the contract, they reneged. Suddenly they found some wording which hadn't come to their attention up till that time, which said that we're paying these guys too much. So they right then and there said, "This has been, we've been looking at this wrong. You guys are paid too much, and we aren't going to do it anymore." However, I was still pretty confident because, as I said, there had been a consistent past practice that the museum had, in actuality, gone along with the contract. They had plenty of time in that past to say something was wrong. So they hadn't, so that went against them. There also were copious notes taken, including my own, in negotiations which backed up our points. There also was an arbitrator. We went into arbitration in that negotiations, and that arbitrator witnessed what had gone on. And finally, we had the United Plant Guard Workers of America to back us up. Nope. The plant guard workers suddenly also agreed with the museum. I couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it. I called up John Baumler, who was the fellow who came out of retirement for UPWA and helped us in negotiations with the museum. John, I said, this can't be. I said, it was very clear, you were there, that this was what was meant to be in the contract, not what the museum is now claiming. Very, very dryly, nope, we agree with the museum. I said, John, you were there. We agree with the museum. Whoa. Collusion was the word that rolled around in my brain and in many others of the security guards. Years later, a night watch guard, Dave Skirky, came to me and he told me that indeed he had seen on his rounds in the administrative office, he had seen a letter of collusion between the museum and UPWA. Anyway, you can imagine what the atmosphere for the security guards was at the museum. It was like a morgue. How can this happen? How could we have gotten in with a union like that? And indeed, the union, UPWA, was now looking like one of those very bad unions that you hear about and which the museum had argued against at the beginning. So Lisa Ray, whom I mentioned just before, who'd worked on the contract with us, came to me and said, Mikey, you got to do something. I'm thinking, what can I do? What can I do? So I go to my man Dave, Dave Hebden, and I say, Dave, what to do? Well, Dave had heard about this new group, Jobs with Justice. And that group had come into being for one of the reasons was directly for people who had problems just like we had. So I went to Jobs with Justice, and the head guy, Rand Wilson, I talked to him, and Rand said, I have just the guy for you. Go see Phil Mamber, who's the president of the UE, the United Electrical Workers. There are two electrical, in case anybody's confused, there are two electrical unions, and the UE is by far the most progressive, and is probably the most progressive union in the country. So I went to Phil Mamber, who was one of the kindest people I have ever met, and Phil took me under his arm. He tried his darndest. He talked to me for many an afternoon. He went out of his way and met with me to see if he could put me under and our people under the umbrella of the UE. He even brought in his lawyer. But darned, the Taft-Hartley Act, that act from around 1948, which had as one of its strictures that security guards in the private sector, and the museum was in the private sector, cannot join the AFL-CIO, and there was no way around it. So we went back to Rand Wilson, what to do. So we started thinking of a new idea, Rand and myself, which is having an independent union. So we thought about how we could organize an independent union at the museum for the security guards. And Rand said, well, you should go see Robert Schwartz, who's one of the great labor lawyers in the country. He's written the Bible for labor law and labor unions dealing with management. So I went to see Robert, and he says to me, he says, well, he says, I'd love to help you. He says, but I doubt if you could pay my fees or fees of any lawyer. He said, but I know just the guy for you. And he points me to Paul McCarthy, an old-time labor consultant, and he gives me his number. And I call Paul, and Paul happens to be on vacation on Cape Cod. So he agrees to meet with us, and we meet, Paul, myself, Jim Kowalski, our treasurer, and Russell Guilfoyle at a little Middle Eastern restaurant a couple blocks away from the museum. And Paul agreed to help us. He even agreed to forswear any of his salary until we actually made it as as an independent union, which I did not know was not going to be an easy thing at all. But I didn't know that then. So we get our plans together, and mainly our plans are targeted for what is called the window of opportunity. And the window of opportunity is what comes at the end of a contract, when the contract is over between management and the union. And at that time, you have a chance to either disaffiliate from the union which you are affiliated with, to affiliate with a new union, or totally disaffiliate from any unions. So we got together what we call the progressive ticket. We got guards from all segments of the security guard force, and culturally there were many segments, I can tell you, and so we got some from each segment, and this was meant to have people who could work with us when that window of opportunity came, and also when we became an independent union, that they could run for office. So that time is coming. And we are at the ready. And I beckon Jim Kowalski again, the treasurer. Jim, quickly, get our money out of the bank, out of our big bank where the union knows that we have the money. Put it in some obscure bank where they don't know that we have the money, and do it quickly. Jim did that, and quickly. And in the meantime, we were setting up with the National Labor Relations Board to have a three-way contest, which is what had to happen. And that was a contest between an independent union, between the old union, and you had to have the freedom for the members to vote for no union. So that got set up, and the very next day, what should happen? But the United Plant Guard workers swooped into the bank the day after we had moved our money, and they froze our assets. Of course, there was very little assets. I told Jim, well, you can leave a little bit for what we might owe, for the little bit that they might have done for us. So at any rate, they were pissed. So here, a day after that, comes to Dear Brother Rayson. That's me. My name is Michael Rayson. And it says, it has come to our attention, says UPQA, that conditions exist in local union number 541, us, which seriously impair its ability to perform its functions regarding the property and assets of the local. to assure performance of collective bargaining agreements or otherwise to assure carrying out the legitimate objectives of both the international and local unions. Specifically, certain officers and members, that's me, have initiated actions to withdraw and disaffiliate from the international union UPGWA. As a consequence, we are compelled to take action to protect the assets of local union number 541, and then pursuant to the authority granted by Article 12, etc., etc., etc. Then what happens? Well, what happens is we are bombarded from UPGWA with letters telling the members what a horrible person Racing is. Don't have anything to do with anything associated with racing. These are coming fast and furious. And all of a sudden, everything is quiet. What happened? I read once again from the book. Then an amazing thing happened. Suddenly, they stopped their assault. That's UPGWA. It was not clear why, but here is what apparently took place. It seems that many members of the International Union were not only dissatisfied with the president of UPGWA, Eugene McConville, and some of his lieutenants, Kerry Lacey probably among them, but were also suspicious of their conduct in relation to the handling of union funds. The accusations appeared to be quite serious, serious enough that they were now trying to save their jobs, their reputations, and perhaps their ability to stay out of jail. Suddenly, racing and the Museum of Fine Arts, Local 541, were no longer important. So there we come to the end of the examination for this time of what the single most important event that happened. The second part of that will come next week, in which we will see the battle for an independent union, where we finish our examination of betrayal and collusion, and why it was the central most important event. Okay, we come to now the email portion of the show, which is I'm encouraging people to write in if you have suggestions, comments, or questions. And for this week, we start out with this question. It's actually a series of 3 questions. Has the book Organizing Tales been published yet? And the answer is no. But I'm trying. And if anybody has any help out there, I'm certainly happy to find out. And the second part of the question is, if not, is there any way that I can read it? Yes, the answer to that is yes, there is. On my blog on WordPress, I believe, hopefully at the bottom of this of the screen, you'll see my email, and which is where you can send in there. And if you send to my email, I will send you a link to my blog on WordPress. And on that blog, there at the top, there is a JPEG of the manuscript for Organizing Tales. You click on it, it scrolls down, and you'll be able to read pretty easily the whole book. Now, the third part of the question is, what was the inspiration for writing the book? Well, Bill Gamson, who had been the president of the American Sociological Society, had heard me relate much of the book that of the Organizing Tales which you are hearing. And Bill was very big on the fact that if you are a witness or a participant in an important event in social activism or any movement of such that you kind of have a responsibility to put that down on paper so that it's not lost to posterity. So I listened to Bill, and as a result, I wrote this book, Organizing Tales. So once again, I encourage people to send comments, questions, or suggestions. And I hope that you, if you notice the, down at the bottom of the screen here, I hope you'll see my email, and the more the merrier. I will enjoy seeing, receiving that. Okay, we will now dance our way out of here. If I can get myself back to where I was here with Billy Bragg. And Billy Bragg, whoop, come on, Billy Bragg, here we go. And Billy Bragg will be singing for us with his boys, There Is Power in a Union. So farewell until next week, and hopefully I will become more competent in this technological world. So long to you all, and farewell, and I hope you'll tune in next week to Organizing Tales.
I looked in the medicine cabinet.
Did I tell you about that time I pooped in a bag?
Took what I could find.
Well, there's one I'm rather ashamed of, but it was a mistake.